Hello, this is Glasgow Rangers Nation. I'm Owen James, and this is all your latest Rangers news, guys. And just when you thought it was safe, just when you thought the Hamza stories had disappeared and gone away, and with the news that Lille were probably going to be unable to meet Rangers' asking price for Hamza Igerman, suddenly more stories emerge in today's media. It's been reported that three, yes, that's right, count them, 1, 2, 3, and we all know three is the magic number, as I think it was Imagine Dragons once sang. Clubs are chasing Hamza Igerman, the Moroccan striker. Again, an 8-figure fee rumoured to be the asking price for the young Moroccan. Technically gifted, very promising, one of the best strikers at the club. I'd say that, him and Danny way ahead of anything else we have at the club at this moment in time. Before any of you come back at me with Cyril Dessers, guys, where's the Dessers 8-figure bids and where's the top European clubs chasing him? Let's get this in for some perspective. God, I haven't even been drinking. I don't drink, so there you go. Anyway, Hamza Igerman, according to reports in today's media, is the subject of interest from the Dutch giants Feyenoord, from Everton of the English Premier League. That is a club that previously have been interested in Hamza Igerman, and Udinese of the Italian league. Now, you look at those three options there that are reportedly interested in him, and Feyenoord, obviously, pounding word, had been interested in Cyril Dessers, obviously now looking at a better option, a higher upgrade on that, and going for someone like Hamza Igerman. I've got to say, look, as much as I don't want Hamza to leave and I want Hamza to stay for another season, I mean, I'd love to go into the season and to go through this season with three strikers, being Hamza, Turgeman and Danilo. I'd love it to be those three players. Of course I would. And I'd love Hamza to stay. The more you see him linked with moves to Feyenoord, with moves to clubs like Feyenoord, for example, who are one of the big teams in Europe, who can offer him more money than we can offer him. It's going to become an option. Feyenoord, like I said, are a big club in Holland. They are one of the big three in Holland. People talk about the Eredivisie, they talk about Ajax, obviously, they talk about PSV Eindhoven, but Feyenoord are right up there with them. So Feyenoord last season obviously didn't have as good a season as they have in previous. They had obviously lost their manager. They finished fourth, some 10 points behind Ajax in second, and 11 points behind the champions PSV. And obviously getting back to the form of previous seasons. I mean, obviously 2023-24 they finished second. The PSV only some 7 points behind them, and the season before that they were the Dutch champions in 22-23 under Arne Slot, the Liverpool manager. So this is a top club. And Hamza Igerman, obviously seen by Feyenoord as offering a fantastic option for them. Someone who can come in and can sort of add to their team straight away. Now, obviously, the other option is Everton. Now, Everton have, I think it's fair to say, really struggled over the last few seasons in the EPL. They did better last season once they sacked Sean Dyche and moved on to David Moyes. Moyes came back in and obviously, offered them a much more bolder, kind of offensive style of football. I mean, offensive in terms of the way they played, been quite aggressive. But he certainly gave them more of a backbone, more of a bit of a spirit to them, and sort of got them back into being some respectability really that season. They finished 13th after being in and around the relegation spots for most of the start of the season, more than safe on 48 points. In fact, their form once David Moyes took over was probably top 10 form anyway. So look, they're a team heading in the right direction. They have new owners in the Friedkin group. So they have money now. So yes, they would be able to obviously pay us the rest of Nathan Patterson money before anybody mentions that. They obviously have David Moyes as their manager. They've just moved into a brand spanking new state-of-the-art stadium, the rather weirdly named Hill Dickinson Stadium, which is on the Albert Docks in Liverpool, and it's a very spectacular looking stadium. If you haven't seen it, give it a Google and give it a check out. But yeah, Dan Friedkin, who is the chairman, is an exceptionally rich and ambitious individual. He's the CEO of the Friedkin Group, and like I said, he is a multi-billionaire. So, Everton obviously are seeking to really push on and develop further and move back into the top 10 clubs in the English Premier League, where I think, their fans would argue that they deserve to be. Udinese are the other club that are reportedly interested from Serie A. So, there's a range of different clubs there offering him a future. Now, in terms of Udinese had a very disappointing season last year, so obviously they wouldn't be able to offer European football, whereas Feyenoord would, but then Everton wouldn't, of course. Udinese finished 12th in Serie A, banging mid-table really on 44 points. Way away from the European places, some 21 points away from Fiorentina, who finished in the last European place. Udinese have had a pretty mixed record of late. They finished 15th the season before that. They've never really kind of hit the heights they have in previous years, where they did finish certainly within the top 10 of Serie A. They've kind of really struggled. But the Pozzi family that own Udinese are very ambitious. They also own Watford, I believe it is, as well. So, this is three teams that, can certainly offer money to Hamza, can offer him probably more than we can. In terms of fee, you'd be looking at trying to push this now. If you've got three clubs interested in a player, this is where you push it. This is where you play one club off against another. This is where you get bidding wars hopefully involved, and you maximise the value of that of said player. Now, previous to obviously the bid obviously going away, the fee that Rangers reportedly wanted for Hamza was €17 million, which is about £15 million. So if looking at £15 million, let's talk in pounds, shillings and pence. So 15 million. If you've got three clubs pushing to try and get his signature in Feyenoord, in Everton and Udinese, all clubs that have money, that have money to spend, that have the ability to pay decent wages as well to a player, you'd be looking at trying to push this to 15 to 20 million, certainly pushing up beyond 15 million, perhaps getting 16, 17, 18 million, but making sure that if you did sell him, you're putting that sell-on clause into that contract and behaving like a modern club. So looking at a 20-25% sell-on clause, because look, no disrespect to Feyenoord, Everton or Udinese, but realistically, if Hamza goes to, I would say out of those three clubs, you'd look at Everton and Feyenoord as being better options. One's in the EPL, which obviously is the place to be, the place to play, and Feyenoord obviously been a big club in Holland, and one of a club that regularly competes in Europe and does well in Europe. You'd be looking at again, a decent amount of money to sell on, because I don't think they stay with Everton. He doesn't stay with Everton or Feyenoord. If he does well for those clubs, he's likely to have top 4, top 5 clubs in England sniffing around him. Some of the big clubs from the European top 5 leagues sniffing around him. So you're probably not going to hang on to him for a massive amount of time. Now look, I get the argument. As regards those three clubs, the only club you can probably as a Rangers fan, really being a Rangers fan for a minute, the only one of those three clubs you can see being a step up, kind of, is Everton, because they play in the English Premier League. That's it. Everton are not a bigger club than Rangers. They're not very successful. They used to be. They're not now. They may get back there with the Freaking Group. Who knows? But they're certainly not a massively successful club. But they are a Premier League club, which automatically makes them cash rich, which automatically gives you more limelight. The EPL is the most watched, most funded league in the world, whether we like it or not. Feyenoord and Udinese, the Eredivisie, is it any stronger? Is it any better than the SPL? Well, probably yes, on European rankings, because you've got obviously Feyenoord, Ajax, PSV, and then you've got a second level of teams who can compete from season to season with those top three in AZ Alkmaar, Twente, for example. But is that such a massive step up? That's the question. Udinese, again, yes, they play in Serie A, which again is a stronger league, but they're not a team that ever really these days challenge for Europe or challenge for top honours in Italy. So I can see argument against that, but look, I think the issue is that once money starts coming in terms of bids for the player, then heads get turned, don't they? And once heads get turned, then you start talking obviously about needing to move players on, because they're not 100% focused on what they've got to do at Rangers. And you've also, I suppose, got to look at it in terms of the fact that if you can get somewhere between 15 and 20 million for him, you are looking at a substantial amount of money which could be then reinvested in the playing squad, and you could bring in some real top talent for that money. So look, it's 6 and 2 threes, isn't it? But yeah, 3 clubs now interested and in for Hamza Igerman. It has been reported. Guys, give me your thoughts on this story. Thanks for watching Glasgow Rangers Nation, guys. As always, if you've enjoyed the content, please like, comment, share and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one.